Dain, commander of the Night Guard, had this keep built on the edge of civilization to hold the monsters at bay, goblins, orcs, and other mundane creatures that threatened the civilized world. He named it Dain's Watch. Dain had no idea that something else was lurking deep below the surface, long buried and forgotten. At first, things seemed fine, but a few years after it was built, the watch became shut off from the world in connection with something unexpected being unearthed. All this happened 100 years ago. Since the watch became cut off, many adventurers and treasure seekers have gone exploring to find out what happened, but none have returned. So that is the sort of starting point of this mega dungeon that we're working on, and this is my first week of work. This is the Gatehouse. And so what I'm doing here is I have on the one side, I have showing uh, the notes, and on the other side I have the map. What I had originally been doing was typing the notes on the map, but it just became way too cluttered, and there's really not a lot of rich text featuring on this dungeon scroll. It's basically just plain text. And I wanted to have links to like monsters when I was creating them and stuff like that. So we're going to see the PDF that I generated from my notes. My actual notes are in Obsidian with lots of hyperlinks and stuff, but Obsidian is a little hard to. It's a little difficult because you can sort of see the code as you're doing it, and so I think it looks better to make it as a PDF. So we're going to use the PDF. So I've got 7 rooms created and a corridor. The corridor is not a room; it doesn't count. That's up to you as a Dungeon 23 creator. Do corridors count or not? I'm not counting corridors. I'm only counting rooms, unless there's something important in the corridor. In this case, there is not. So there are 2 levels to this gatehouse. The bottom level here with rooms 0101, 0102, and 0105, because I did this side first. This bottom level is the floor level, and then there are stairs leading up this way to here and up this way to here. You can see it down here to a second level that's on top, right? And there's a corridor going across the top. So there's a portcullis here and a rusted portcullis here. Both are rusted open. There are arrow slits on the sides. There's a trap right here. If you walk in, a block of stone will hit you, fall and hit you. And then the doors, of course, are on the inside where the keep would be. Now, I haven't yet decided if this is actually attached to the keep or if there are going to be some grounds and then the keep is further north. We'll figure that out next week. This is our first week of progress. So room 0101. So before we do any of that, so you're supposed to pick a theme, right? There's a list of themes that the guy who created this project proposed, and so far I've used the doors. And what I decided to do is, since there are 52 themes, because there are 52 weeks, I'm going to draw cards. So at the end of this episode, we'll draw cards for next week's theme. The theme was doors. So I created it says 1d6, a 1d8 roll. Each door had a 7 out of 8 probability of some sort of a feature. So it's either stuck or locked or trapped or locked and trapped. And I just have this note for myself that I could use a variety of things for tricks and traps on the doors. I created a random encounter generator at the end after I knew what creatures existed here. There are 2. There's a Wamp, which is a Lovecraftian creature from the Dreamlands that's here. They haunt ruins. Now, how something got here from the Dreamlands, I don't know. But I suspect somewhere in this dungeon, probably on one of the lower levels, there must be a portal to the Dreamlands or some room where you fall asleep and you enter the Dreamlands or something. Don't know. There might be a part of the dungeon that's actually in the Dreamlands. I do make a comment here that we'll get back to. So let's go through the rooms and then we'll come back. The first room is the gatehouse entrance, right? And I had shown that already. So I'm just going to quickly go over it. The portcullises are rusted open. There are arrow slits. It's unlikely anybody's going to be using the arrow slits unless the characters make a bunch of noise in here, because there are goblins up in room 0106, and if they hear them, they could come down the stairs and shoot them through the arrow slits. But right now, the goblins are up in room 0106. Again, there's this floor plate, and all of these numbers and stats are for Savage Worlds, because that's my game of choice right now. So you can roll notice to detect. It's a -2. to detect it, -2 agility to avoid, to dodge away, to disarm it's -2 thievery roll, and if it hits, if you crit fail to avoid, you're going to take 3d6, otherwise you take 2d6 damage. That's pretty much out of Fantasy Companion with a little bit of a tweak. The second room, which is to the east here, right, you can only access it through the north door. The north door is unlocked but trapped with a poison needle trap. It takes a notice roll with a raise to detect, so it's basically a notice -4. Thievery to disarm. The reason I write notice with a raise rather than notice -4 is I feel like if you say roll notice -4 to the players on a trap like this, yeah, they're going to know something's up. If you just say roll notice and wait to see if they get a raise and so on, then you'll, I think that's a little easier. There's a mild poison. This is, again, Savage World's vigor roll to resist. On a fail, you get a level of fatigue. On a crit fail, you get 2 levels of fatigue. There are 4 types of poison, so I just rolled a d4 and came up with a mild poison. Inside the room itself, this was originally a guard room. This is like the coolest feature in the Gatehouse, and I have no idea what put this here. Guards would have used the arrow slits, etc. There's leathery, giant, bat-like wings of some poor creature nailed crudely to the west wall, providing gruesome covering, and that's the B. So now if we look at B, so let's go down to the occult skill. A success on the occult skill to determine the wing determines it's not the wing of a dragon or a giant bat or any other monster known to the party. It is something else. It's actually the wing of a shantak bird, which is from the Dreamlands also. The PC would need to have either been in the Dreamlands or seen a shantak or have seen some reference to it to know it's there or completely ID it. So they see this wing of this weird creature nailed to the wall. I don't know what nailed it. Nothing in this area would have. And in fact, when we get to Area 6, we'll talk about the goblins. The south door, which is the door to the upstairs, is also locked and trapped. Is locked and also trapped. Notice with a raise to detect the trap, thievery to disarm. It's a pit trap. If you open the door without disarming, there's a mechanism that causes the floor to drop away. It's a 10-foot drop, does 1d6 plus 1 falling damage. And then the stairs here lead up to the east tower. So if we look at the east guard quarters, right, this is down here. One of the things I rolled up using the doors, D is for doors from the Dungeon Alphabet from the guys who make Dungeon Crawl Classics, another great book. It said that there's the door is actually a false door. That's the door to the north here. Is actually a false door with a secret door right beside it. So this room has a door on the south, but also a false door, secret door. Now remember, the reason I'm doing this sort of doors stuff is because the theme of this area is doors. Right, so I want there to be a lot of doors and stuff related to doors. So there's some debris on the north side in Area C. And underneath the debris is a wamp. A wamp is a Dreamlands creature. It's not super powerful. There's only one of them because they're solitary. So this would be a super easy combat if they get into battle with it. If it's unnoticed, it will try to ambush them. The south door here is locked. Is my mouse showing up? I don't know if the mouse is showing up here, but the south door is locked, and like I said, the north door is a false door, and there's a secret door that leads, and the west door is unlocked, and the secret door is also unlocked. So now we go to the north room, 104. This is the armory. It used to be the armory where the guards kept weapons. There's not much that remains. Several empty weapon racks against the east wall, it should say. Typo. Hooks on the west wall where shields and larger weapons might have been stored. There are no weapons or armor. However, there is a stone box, randomly rolled it, against the north wall, and there's a dank, moldy smell. So again, the door is a false door nailed to the wall with a stone wall underneath, and the secret door is a notice -2 to detect it, and pressing the east side of the door causes it to swing inward, and then the stone box is unlocked but trapped. There's a spring-loaded dart. When opened, notice -2 to detect it. Thievery to disarm it does 2d4 damage. And inside are 1,000 copper coins. Then we go to the west tower. Right, so let's go back here. So we go to the west tower. This is room 105. The air is still and warm. There are coarse rat hairs lying scattered around the room, and crumbs of food lie in the corners. Near the south door, lying on the floor, is an old rusted dagger. It's not useful. And there are no creatures in here. The north door is stuck, so it takes an athletics roll to open it. South door is unlocked and is not trapped and opens normally. So it's stuck, but probably recently stuck because the goblins do come in and out of here. If we go upstairs, we come to the goblin quarters, room 6. It used to be the West Tower's quarters for the West Tower's guards. It's currently occupied by goblins. There are 6 goblins in here. I actually rolled 7, but when I put this, there's not really sleeping bags. These are like piles of hay and straw and debris that the goblins use to sleep on. But there was only really room for 6 of them, so I decided, okay, there are 6 goblins in here. There's a ratty old throw rug on the floor from when the keep was in use. The goblins are armed with their typical dog slicers and goblin bows that you get in the Pathfinder Savage Worlds bestiary. The south door is locked. It takes thievery to open. And the north door is trapped with a tripwire on the floor, right in front of the door. And if you trip it, there's a 2d6 with AP1 arrow that's going to be triggered. And I guess I didn't say arrow, but it is an arrow that comes out. And that's because the goblins have their treasure in room 0107. So now the goblins, I have made some notes. They don't know how the Shantak bird wing got there or what it is. They think it's the wing of a dragon because they don't know any better. Because of this wing, the goblins are afraid of the East Tower and fear what might be in there, and they don't know about the Wamp. They're the guards of what I randomly rolled up as the Cold Claw Tribe, which is going to be one of the factions here in the Watch. So one thing with Mega Dungeons is you do factions and their relationships to each other. So far, the only faction we've got now is the Cold Claw Tribe, but I suspect we're going to see a lot of them in the upper level or 2 of this dungeon. Somewhere in the upper level, there's going to be a Goblin Chief and the rest of his cronies. And these guys are, so what I've decided is these guys are kind of like they use the Gatehouse as like a base of operation from which to go out from the Watch and strike out across the countryside and raid and pillage and then come back. And so the reason there's a treasure room is in here is they temporarily keep their treasures here before they move things back to where the chief is. So they come in here in room 7, right? There's a stale smell. There are cobwebs. There are some scratching sounds similar to the first room, which was the entrance to the gatehouse. There seem to be a few human bones in the northeast corner. There are a pair of stools against the north wall. Probably they had been used by the guards when the keep was in operation. This is where the goblins store their treasure. And it's temporary until it moves to the chief's hideout. So the treasure is in F, and it's under a loose floor stone. So it's one square-shaped stone that when you look at it is scratched along the edges and slightly mismatched compared to the others, and it's loose and can be pried up easily. So it's notice -2 to detect. If you just say you're looking at the room in general, even with that -2, they're going to need a success with a raise to notice the floor because they're not looking at the floor, right? If they say that they're looking at the floor, then they just need a success. So they just got to they basically target number 6. And if they say they're looking at the floor stones, they just need a 4. Right, they get a +2, which means negates the -2. There are 3 sacks, and I haven't really decided what the treasure is in there yet. So that's one thing I have left to do is figure out what the treasure is. And then the south door is this one, and then the east door just is locked but not trapped. I actually randomly rolled that, and I think this makes a lot of sense. The goblins are afraid of whatever is on the other side. They don't know what bolted that wing to the wall, and they're afraid of it. And so they would lock this door. So that's the first area. And other than me having to finish out the treasures, we're basically done with it. And I think with the treasures, I might wait to see what the treasure of the Goblin King is, like when we get to him, and then take a little bit of it out and put it into these sacks. I just had to remember to do that. Because I don't think there should be a lot of treasure here, but there should be some. Like these guys are like storing it here before somebody comes and transports it, or some of them go and transport it back to the dungeon, further into the dungeon. And so I think what I should do is roll up the horde of the whole goblin clan, and then take a little bit of it out and put it in here. And that's why I haven't really done the treasure yet. So anyway, that's the gatehouse and its environs. If we look at the random encounters, The Gatehouse isn't terribly active, so there's only a small chance. A roll of 1 on 1d8 is a random encounter if you're going to roll. The most likely case is that some goblins are coming back from a raiding expedition. They usually stop here to turn over some treasure or camp out in room 0106. However, goblins should not be found in any of the east rooms. They avoid, it should be they, another typo, they avoid these rooms because they fear whatever nailed the Shantak bird's wing to the wall. Not that anything may have done so, which may have done so is currently present in this area, because all we have is the Wamp and the goblins. Now, I may come back and change the random encounters as I go through the dungeon and see what other factions are here. Maybe there's a faction that would use the east side and wouldn't be afraid of the Shantak bird. Maybe the guys that nailed the Shantak bird wing to the wall, don't know. We have to figure this out as we go. And that's what happens when you're doing random stuff. So the last thing I want to do is draw a card. I've got a deck of cards here, and I've already pulled out the one that represented the doors theme, which was the 4 of spades. And so now what we're going to do is I'm going to shuffle. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm shuffling, and after I shuffle a few times, I'm going to cut the deck, and then we're going to draw out. And each time I do this, I'll shuffle. And so I'm going to cut the deck, and we're going to pull out the next theme of whatever the next area is going to be. And we'll see what we get. All right, so I've now shuffled enough. I'm going to cut the deck and take the top card. And the top card is a spade again. It is the 6 of spades. Stars. That is the theme of the next area. So that's where we will end this episode, and I will start working on the next 7 rooms for next week. I hope you guys have enjoyed our first foray into the Dungeon 23 challenge. And until next week, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been Dungeon 23.